Hey guys, welcome back to Girl Next Door and thank you so much for being here. How are you today? Someone asked me on Instagram whether it's possible to stay alone forever. Are relationships inevitable? Are they even necessary? And are they good for us? So let's get into it. In the overwhelming absence of any evidence that people prefer to live alone in caves, common knowledge and common sense suggest that in fact, we actually prefer to live with other people or at least alongside other people. Generally speaking, we're just social animals and we like to group up. Without the company of others, we would become socially isolated, which as social animals, we would find extremely difficult. Social isolation in itself is designed to hurt people from cutting off their contact with others and excluding them from group activities. Some interesting research has been done over the years, and personal accounts from people who have lived through social isolation or far worse through total isolation suggest that it is truly one of the most horrific and painful things that a human being can go through. Interviews conducted with released prisoners from war suggest that there are certain stages that occur that actually make people question their will to continue to live. For example, all the sufferers tend to go through the initial stage of extreme pain and agony, which is then followed by apathy. And both of these are sprinkled with hallucinations and vivid dreams, always involving other people. There is one particular study that I find very interesting, which was done by Stanley Schachter, I believe in the late 1950s. And this is where he placed participants alone in separate rooms and gave them unlimited access to stimulating resources such as magazines or books. One of the participants lasted only for 2 hours, whereas another participant lasted for 8 days. What is interesting is that after their release back to their normal lives, every single one of the participants reported that even though the conditions were quite luxurious compared to being a prisoner in total isolation, they all went through unbearable pain. And after this initial period of agony, they all went through a loss of energy, a loss of vitality. Their thoughts about other people were so overwhelming that they didn't have any interest in the stimulating resources that they had been given. From this experiment, Schachter concluded that a person's ability to cope with isolation is not so much related to their personality, rather than their ability to self-motivate. So people that have an internal focus of control will probably be better equipped at coping because they will most certainly create a sort of a routine. They will create stimulations so that they can pass time. Relationships with other people serve on the same basis. They provide us with stimulation from interacting with others and most importantly, the two-way feedback that we get from other people. We could probably assume that the reason we need people is because they provide us exactly with that two-way feedback compared with the one-way feedback that we get from other stimulating resources. Of course, there's an emotional element to that because when we're fearful, when we're truly scared, we tend to gravitate towards others. They serve as a sort of a shield against the fear. And we also have a natural tendency to affiliate with people that kind of share the same fate as us. It feels comforting. Whereas the milder form of fear, which is anxiety, this is when we actually try to stay away from others. So in Schachter's experiment, for example, the reason that person left only in 2 hours could have been because he was genuinely fearful at that point. Whereas the other person who lasted 8 days, he could have been experiencing anxiety up to the point he experienced actual fear and wanted to be released. I'm going to do a whole separate video on the different kinds of relationships that we can have with people, the different kind of love that we can experience, and why and if they're even good for us. However, it's really important to mention that generally, close relationships with people are crucial to our physical and mental well-being. And we tend to form these with partners, friends, and family. They're characterized with intimacy, commitment, emotional support. However, in the absence of access to close relationships, we can resort to instrumental relationships, which are usually temporary. They're non-personal, they're obligation-free, and we tend to form these with work colleagues, for example, acquaintances, or sometimes even our neighbors. These instrumental relationships become the close relationships. If someone has decided that they prefer to spend their life alone, they would probably most certainly need to ensure some sort of close relationships that they can turn to for emotional support, especially if they don't have the internal focus of control, which will allow them to turn isolation into a routine, into discipline, something to provide them with stimulation. So if you were looking for a bit of a psychological analysis, then here you go. However, how about we get a little bit deeper? Because just like anything else, psychology is very limited in what it can provide us with. Obviously, through psychology, we study the mind, the phenomena derived from the mind, and of course our response, our emotions, our behavior. However, between the mind and the response, where are you? Let's simplify things for a second, shall we? Each and every one of us comes with the same equipment. We have a body, we have a mind, we have emotions, and we have energy. Now let's see what will happen if we let every single one of those become a leading force. Our body is obviously our platform of existence. We tend to not really pay attention to it, and we start paying close attention only when it starts creating problems for us, and this is when it becomes the most important thing in our lives. If we let our body be the leading force in how we live our lives, well, we'll probably be constantly preoccupied with getting food, getting sleep, and getting sex. The very primitive physical needs of our body. The mind is obviously the limited data that we've acquired through experiences. And the mind also provides a reflected sense of self. We all have an ego, and it confirms our identity. It confirms to us that we actually exist. And let's be honest, there's only so much that you can achieve through intellect and through your mind. Compared to our thoughts, which are a bit dry and a bit timid, our emotions, on the other hand, are very juicy. And it's very interesting how you can experience emotions totally by yourself. A good example of that is being in love. You know how when you're in the early stages of falling in love with someone, you're kind of going insane. You can be walking down the street and you have this sort of feeling on the inside that the sun is shining for you, the birds are chirping for you, everything is just magnified, the colors are brighter, everything is just stronger and more powerful, and you can feel it on a physical basis. Nobody else around you knows what is going on. Emotions are also not independent from the mind, and this is why they're limited. If you allow your emotions to be the leading force, chances are you will get tangled. And last but not least is your energy, what you put in your work, how you do things, how you make people feel without saying anything or doing anything. Without getting too spiritual on you, energy is about having everything that you need within you. Ask yourself for a second, how much of the time are you actually utilizing everything that you have within you? How much of the time are you not preoccupied with memory of something that you should have said? How much of the time are you not preoccupied with emotions, completely letting them take control? And how much of the time are you not preoccupied with some sort of thought about something in the future is going to bring you the happiness and the joy that you think you deserve? Sadhguru says that if someone enjoys being alone, then that means that they are better organized psychologically and emotionally. The question of, is it possible to stay alone forever, is mostly rooted in some sort of longing, in despair, in an inability to stay alone without feeling lonely, or alternatively, thinking that you're okay being alone, but at the same time experiencing fear that anyone who enters your space is going to contaminate it. You're basically thinking that your energy can be scattered and affected by anyone and everyone. Carl Jung said that loneliness doesn't come from not having other people around, but from being unable to communicate what's important to you, or from holding back certain views because of a belief that other people will find it inadmissible. Let's be honest, staying alone is not something that everyone can do. Some people never experience the true feeling of being alone, and most of us have to practice to get there. And that's because for a lot of people, staying alone means boredom. It means one-way feedback, which is also a form of hiding. Loneliness, on the other hand, is a dependency on the two-way feedback that other people provide you with. And a good example of the issues that this creates is feeling lonely and empty when you're around others. Some people are presumably alone. However, they like to spend a lot of time on social media sharing their lunch or where they are or what they're doing, and at the same time they're also soaking up the information about other people's life. So that's not actually being alone. That's still a form of two-way feedback that is actually quite popular nowadays. Being truly entirely alone means realizing that nobody else but you can establish your identity for you. Sadhguru says that people tend to sit with themselves and they mess with themselves and they make a mess of themselves. So if you manage to release yourself from hiding through one-way feedback, from the dependency on the two-way feedback that you receive from other people, you might actually be able to experience the joy of being in your own company. And so many people that have experienced this say it's in fact one of the most beautiful and amazing experiences that you could ever go through. So remember the reports from people that have been through social isolation and how they say it's one of the most horrific things that you can go through, compared to other people saying that it can be the most beneficial and magical experience. I guess we could assume that it's all down to you, right? What makes reality solid is different things in relationship to other things. And Russell Brand talks about this all the time. Therefore, what makes us solid is our relationships with other people. Nobody would blame you if you thought to yourself, hold up, who am I without my relationships? It's a very big question to ask, and it's one that we should all ask ourselves. The thing is that it's not about being alone. It's not about whether it's possible to stay alone forever. It's all about what it means to you to be alone, and how much aloneness do you actually allow yourself to have. And most importantly, who are you when you're alone? Just something to think about. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!